All right, here we go, y'all. That NBA Life, episode 4. It's February 18th, Sunday night after the All-Star weekend. There was some highs, there were some lows, and there was a little bit in between. James and I here, we're going to get into this. We're going to kind of do it chronologically. First thing I want to talk about is the Rising Star game Friday night on TNT. So those of you not familiar with the format, they've always had a rookie sophomore game, but they've tweaked it and they've made it the world, the international born players versus the American players. And the world got in that ass, right? It was like they already had more talent. If you look at the way the game's played, all their big men can shoot threes. But I think that there is something to be said about the immigrant mentality. They just weren't too cool for school, and they just played harder from the get, and it never got close. It was kind of just dominance. James, did you see any of the Friday night stuff? It was kind of the celebrity shit was just downright embarrassing.
Yeah, you were telling me a little bit about Kevin Hart and how he was kind of roasting people, going back and forth. Yeah, the spectacle was not the best this year.
Yeah, no, Friday night, y'all got to get your boy Alchemy in the celeb game. I'm coming for somebody's neck. Like I'm really gonna go over something because even they had a Canadian world sprinter in there and it was embarrassing. I understand there's nerves. I think you get out there and it's a little nerve wracking. But so that was Friday night. Moving into Saturday night, I really enjoyed the Kobe Shaq sit down and how they've kind of squashed things and they were kind of just reminiscing and telling a little bit of stories in each other's mindset through that whole beef and through that championship run. And something that really caught my ear, those of you that have seen my video on the psychological savagery of Kobe Bryant, there was something that he said. It was the summer before they played the Pacers in the NBA Finals. He caught Reggie Miller out in LA, the UCLA product out there training. And this is a young Kobe Bryant, mind you. This isn't like a vet. And he said, hey, man, Reggie, you want to train together? And he said that he asked Reggie to play one-on-one every time after their training sessions. And what he was doing was he was figuring out his game, what he could get away with, what he couldn't, what he likes to do, his tendencies. And then sure enough, that June, they met the Pacers in the finals and Kobe ate his lunch.
Getting those insider secrets for the most part, keeping a notepad on him, you said, right?
Right, yeah, just scouting him out, and that's one thing for a 33-year-old Kobe Bryant, but like a 24, 25-year-old Kobe to do that, that just adds to the legend that is Kobe with the psychological warfare. Another thing was on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast talking about how Popovich wanted him to draw up plays during the All-Star game, and he wasn't trying to do it because he wanted to see what was in Popovich's mind. He was like, no, you're not going to dissect my mind. I want to see what's in Pop's mind. But he ended up doing it because the Lakers weren't even competitive that season.
Yeah, definitely, man. It kind of brings up the ideas that you go through in chess and also in poker. Basically having that poker face so that they can't see your tells, and then how that translates in chess would be tempos and threats, and kind of segueing into our conversation later on about toughness and risk assessment. Yeah, Kobe kind of used a chess move when you think about it. You want to bait them. You want them to kind of show you their hands, show you their tells, and he definitely utilized that to his advantage.
Yeah, he's one of a kind. I remember I mentioned it earlier. We watched the game, the All-Star game, and I mentioned the Jordan Kobe thing, and I expect a video or something on that because I have some thoughts on that, and I think it's a little bit skewed. But so Saturday night, that Kobe Shaq interview was dope. Shaq's a legend, but it's funny to see these. Shaq has to watch himself because he is a giant. You know what I'm saying? I'm guessing he's pushing somewhere between 400 and 500 pounds at this point.
Get out of here. Shaq's not 4.
I mean, think about it. He's 7'1". You want to talk about who's, Tracy McGrady looks like he stumbled into a beehive. T-Mac is, you're on TV, brother. He's swollen as hell. But so going into the Saturday night, I'm not a big fan of the skills thing. I think they need to change that up. And I'm glad they got rid of where they brought back like an old player and then they did a WNBA player and a current player. That little 3-on-3 thing was That's where like you went and made a beer run. But first up was the 3-point comp. What did you think?
Man, I kind of noticed E. Gordon, T. Harris, and D. Booker. They were on point. Gordon started off relatively slow. It brings me to the idea of how you organize your rack. And I want to ask you, after we assess, how would you organize your balls? Would you put the money ones up top? Would you put them towards the end? It's always
I always tuck them high and tight, my friend. No.
Right. What about their swinging around? But I think E. Gordon should have kept him high and tight, because for the first couple racks, he had like 3 points. He just in, out, just missing a whole bunch of them. And then he put a lot of his good balls and he missed that whole rack. That's what I think that Devin Booker did very well. I believe, from what I remember, he put all of his towards the end once he was warmed up and feeling nice in that corner over on the right side. And he basically sunk them all. And you could tell when Clay dapped him up after it was over with, there was much respect. And within their shooting forms, you're always a big fan of looking at their pockets and their feet. And they shoot in a similar fashion. Not a lot of height off the ground, but the body seems to be relatively triangular, focused up right at the top of the cup. And it was kind of interesting. Clay at the top of the key is magnificent. He made all those. But what I liked about it was, I was kind of not impressed with Eric Gordon. T. Harris, he gave him kind of the I'm glad you would slipped up smile. So if y'all go back and look at it, you can kind of tell whenever you do anything that has heats or runs, especially in skateboarding or extreme sports or even figure skating, if the person before you does a crappy run, you're already kind of cheesing like, yeah. So he already knew Eric Gordon wasn't about to compete. So Harris gets up there, does decent, doesn't put up too much. But yeah, Booker, I think he did a wonderful job. And I think to all the light-skinned cats out there, I think y'all really have just kind of taken over. I think that's the recipe for 3-point shooting. You need to be mixed and have an NBA dad and maybe a soccer mom or something like that.
The takeover. Well, it's interesting. I've heard the theory of how the NBA, they talk about how it's become suburbanized, and it's no longer the cats from the blacktops in the inner cities. It's the kids that can afford to go shoot in the shooting machine in an open gym, and reps and efficiency, and how many shots can you get up in an hour of training, and pay for a personal trainer. And that's what you're seeing. I think Devin Booker altered his shot. He has more elevation, especially off the dribble. And guys, it's not like unheard of, right? He has a different set shot than he does an off the dribble jump shot. And I think that I've done one of these 3-point contests in just like a local. It was actually a Mountainside Fitness, but there was a dunk comp and a 3 comp. I can't do the dunk comp. Like I can dunk, but I can't I'm not foolish. I can't put it through my legs or anything like that. And I did the 3, and it's very different to pull the ball off the rack. Like you have to practice it. If you walk in there and you think like, oh, I'll just find my rhythm, it's not happening. It's very unnatural. And so guys that are off the dribble shooters never win it, really. You saw Paul George, he went in single digits. Paul George had like 7 or 8 points. And the funny thing you say about Clay is the least amount of his 3-pointers come from the top of the key. So that was interesting that he got hot there. But I think that it's one of those scenarios where, do you pick your hot spot, or do you pick where do you think you're gonna be in a rhythm as far as endurance goes?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying. Like, how many racks are there? There's 4 of them, right? Or
no, because you got corner, wing, top, wing, corner. So is that 5?
Yeah, so 5 definitely. So you figuring how many balls are on the rack? Like 6?
5, I believe.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it's kind of a numbers thing. That's what I was thinking about with strategy. How can you spread it out to make sure that you keep the energy throughout? Because I kind of noticed with a couple of them, they were getting real hot and they just went suddenly cold. But I think you definitely want to finish strong. So I'd probably try and put all mine towards the end after I'd gotten some confidence, seen a bunch of them go in at first.
Get the nerves out, possibly. I don't know. I might be. I might try and spread the money balls and just do it old school and put it in each one, because some guys are hot shooters. I've noticed Steph in the past. He usually hits the beginning of his racks, and then some guys it's endurance. If you're if you're like a Ray Allen type jump shooter where you have a lot of elevation, that last rack is probably not going to be ideal for you to put your money balls in. Yeah, and that's why you saw Devin Booker. He switched to the set shot, and it was cool to see him get some sort of recognition, because he's buried out here in Phoenix, where again, man, the habits. And we've heard the Klay Thompson comparisons. And it's funny how you're always going to compare guys with similar physical attributes as well. But Devin Booker is much better off the bounce. He's a much better ball handler. He's become a lead guard. They're running him in a high usage pick and roll rate. But we haven't seen him play a lick of defense is this his third season? So it's kind of hard to pick up those habits, in year 4, 5, and 6. Like you gotta start playing defense, man. But so the 3-point competition I thought was cool. I was disappointed in the dunk comp. I was disappointed in the dunk comp. Those of you that were with me live, I was lit, man. I was deep. I was off like half a bottle of champagne and like 3 or 4 stouts, and people were like, "Alchemy is toasted up in here, man." And I got a little carried away with probably just interacting with the live comments and not watching it as closely as I should. But I said it like I said in the live thing, and we've hooped. Remember, my glorious 10'6" dunk.
Oh yes, one day, just so y'all can know, we were up at the school. It was right around lunchtime, and the homie had always had his chicken, rice, and the butternut squash that he loves to eat. And he just, for whatever reason, some kid is walking by, supposed to be in class, but kicks the ball one more time after they've been asked not to. Ball rolls down the court, and this fool just grabs the ball hella quickly, no thought, and just jumps up and dunks on our goal. And the thing about our goal at that school was we measured it, like we hella climbed on the top of it whenever we were training kids to see what their vertical would be. So we climbed on top of the goal and put a measuring stick down. And it's actually like 10-7. And this court's like hella janky. This year they didn't even allow kids to play on it any longer. There was like a league investigation. But yeah, this will definitely bang pretty easily. No thought on 10-6. So it was pretty smooth.
Yeah, there's my glory story right there. But it was, and what it is because the pole, right, it wasn't put in right to the concrete, and then the slab of concrete it's on is like on a tilt, and so it's all sorts of jacked up. But my point is that I can throw it off the backboard or bounce it and kind of cock it back and dunk it. And the fact that kind of won the dunk competition, I was like, get out of here with that shit. And
you think it was? What about the 2-goal thing? I thought that was pretty clever.
I thought it was more gimmicky. I saw JaVale McGee. I think JaVale dunked on both of them. Now, JaVale's 7 foot, but they put 2 next to each other, and he reached out and dunked on each one at the same time simultaneously. And I don't like the gimmick shit. They need to be banned from putting on old jerseys. Like, that shit is embarrassing. It's not even unique or creative anymore. Like, the first time someone did it like 5-6 years ago, it was like, oh, that's cool, right? Now everybody does it. So that was corny. You had Donovan Mitchell in booty shorts. And it was, and so I'll get back again to those. I don't know how, I think I had maybe like 400 people on the live stream, but here's my suggestion to fixing the dunk competition, because ultimately we're not going to see anything really new. I'm not complaining about that. I know it's, there's only so many things you can do. What it is it's who is in it is what's going to make it exciting. Now, Donovan Mitchell's a rising star. Dennis Smith Jr. It could go either way for him. Honestly, he could have a very Stevie Francis type, rise and fall. But so. What made Dominique Jordan, Sean Kemp, all these Kevin, all these dudes, Spud Webb, it was like the superstars of the league, minus Spud Webb, but still, he was like a freak show in himself. But so here's my suggestion. The dunk competition is comprised of 5 contestants that are NBA All-Stars. There has to be 5 of the, how many are picked, 20 All-Stars or whatever it may be, and the 5 that are picked are simply fan voted. So the fans pick all 5, and it's like, you're an all-star, you have to go out there. You're not saying you have to do something amazing, but you got to try. And so I would guess the fans would vote in Steph Curry to clown him, right? And you'd get a LeBron vote. You'd probably get a Westbrook vote, right? So that's 3, and pick 2 more. DeMar DeRozan has some crazy ups, and then maybe like another clown vote. Put LaMarcus Aldridge in there or something like that. And so part of it, right? Because you know how when you watch America's Got Talent and there's someone like with a sword in their throat, or they're rocking a tightrope, like you're not watching it because it's amazing. You're watching it because you want to see someone mess up.
Yeah, like how far can they really take this? What's really good with what's going on?
Yeah, and like I said, take some of it. So who cares if it's a windmill or it's not that creative? It's LeBron versus Durant versus
You
Westbrook.
get
So
the name recognition, yeah.
exactly. I think that's how you do it, but I don't know. I don't think they can, I guess, force these guys to do it. And most of the superstars in the league are looking towards April and May and June. So I don't know. That was my thought of that. Anything else you saw Saturday night?
Nah, not really, man. They basically got it in. It was entertaining. Like I was saying, just in general throughout the 3 days, the spectacle is just the shine and shimmer is not necessarily there. Kind of lackluster. Even the jerseys themselves, just kind of interesting. I
I
wasn't.
liked I like the less is more look because sometimes they do a little bit too much with the All-Star jerseys. I like just the black and white simple look. As far as like some sort of gear that you would rock as a fan, some sort of gear that you would rock as a fan. Larry Nance Jr. was disappointing. That double tap dunk. The dunks were unimpressive when Kenny and the announcers were like, "Oh, that will look better on replay.
Yeah.
Oh, that will look really good in slow-mo." It's like, "Oh, really?" Like everything looks dope in slow motion. Me picking my nose could be epic.
Did you ever see?
If it's
Did you ever see that Dave Chappelle where he's like, "Not everything in slow mo is as cool as it thinks," and he's basically on the toilet. He's taking this horrible doo doo, and then basically he rockets up into the air. It's just very ridiculous. So yeah, you're right. Everything on slow mo or replay seems better. And I love how they're trying to say, "Oh yeah, that was a clean block," and then you look back at it, and the man is basically shaking hands with the other dude in the air, altering his shot.
Well, and that's why shout out Reggie Miller. I've said this before. Reggie is one of the only that keeps it a buck in the booth. Like he's like, nope, that was whack. Like I don't think so. And because these other cats, they're like, it's you're waiting for Kenny Smith to be like, the dunk contest is back. It's over. Oh, and you're like, man, come on. Who are you talking to, dude? Who are you talking to? I'm gonna veer off subject real quick because you brought up Dave Chappelle. And I don't know if you caught that Faison Love, Big Perm from Friday, he was doing his rounds on the radio, the morning radio circuit, and he said Dave Chappelle is talentless, basically, and not funny, and black people don't fuck with him. And kind of went in, man, and, saying that basically Charlie Murphy, I believe, wrote most of the Dave Chappelle show, and white America put Dave Chappelle on.
Well, there's a lot of different examples how people can say that. If you look in the Hispanic community, Carlos Mencia, a lot of people said the same thing about him whenever he had Mencia Tells It All or whatever that show was. And it's interesting, that whole genre of shows around that time frame. But yeah, you're right. There are certain people, you think of George Lopez as compared to Mencia. So yeah, Big Perm definitely's got that more humorous stuff. I don't know if y'all get a chance to watch Three Strikes again. That scene there is just
Brian Hooks.
yeah.
Brian Hooks was that dude for the straight bootleg, straight to
Yes.
blockbuster
Are you
shit.
kidding me? Hell yeah, Benny.
But hold on. But I want to. I know that I sprung this subject on you here. But and it's fair. I understand what he's saying. But I think that there's I understand what he's saying, that maybe the majority of Dave Chappelle's fan base is white. But regardless, he is a comedic icon. And excuse me, man, I always get to burping on here. I don't know if it's the bubble gets, nah. But, to me, and I'm somebody who, I think of myself as funny. I think one of the big keys to being funny is to think that you're funny. You know what I'm saying? It's like selling it. But me examining humor, to me, Dave Chappelle, his elite skill is his writing, like his writing of his jokes. And he doesn't necessarily always nail the delivery. You know what I mean? So he doesn't. And if you want to look at black comedians, it kind of goes the other way around. Now there's some outliers to that, but a lot more of black comedy. It's more in how it's said and the delivery of it, rather than it being like really well written.
Yes, and then I know you're also a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan. And you think about Larry David or Seinfeld and some of our white counterparts. It is somewhat more of that Shakespearean or Witten-esque type writing it out. But yeah, Dave does an excellent job of painting a picture. Like he really tells stories, and not that other comedians don't, but I think Dave probably really visualizes things in skits. And then that's kind of one of his big things. And they say comedy's like a house. You basically want to have a good structure and live within that house. But if you try and have the jokes be the house, you'll fail. So you're right. You personally have to be funny, and your material needs to be good. If you just have jokes and you're trying to entertain people, that tends not to go as well as actually generally being humorous and making yourself laugh.
Right. Right. No, to me, and I've said this, but I ruin a lot. Like, don't watch TV shows and movies with me, because I basically point out all the faults and all the shit. My kids, they leave the room, or they when the rarity, and you can call me out on this, the rare time where I'll leave the crib.
Oh, never. Oh my gosh.
Everybody in the house rejoices and starts watching bad TV because they can watch it without any kind of
yeah, man, we're very similar in that. Like Claudia doesn't understand. Like it just makes me physically uncomfortable. Like I hate to bogart it, but I'm like, we just need to turn this off. Like I feel like I'm getting stupider. Like something within me just takes issue with this. This needs to change now. And she's like, "Oh, you're so judgmental." I'm like, "Well, just watch this in the other room." Like, so I feel you. Like, I tend not to make comments. I just get hella uncomfortable.
And like, Nita's watching TV, and I'm like, "How can you watch this?" And she goes, "I'm just killing time." And I go, killing time? I want more time. Like, I'm killing time. Like, and it's just being a dick, but she puts up with me, man. She don't ever give me a hard time about it. But to finish up on comedy, my thing is with today's, if you want to look at sitcoms and movies, and you brought up Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld understand the buildup of a joke. You can't have punchline after punchline. It has to be realistic and serious, and then boom, you get hit with something within the realism, at least for me. And to a lot of today's comedy, it's just like by volume. They're volume shooting. It's like, oh, was this funny? No, well, let me try this, and let me try this, and let me try this, and until they get a laugh. And that shit, I can't do it.
Yeah, man, volume shooters. So yeah, what'd you think about tonight? Like, what was the score at the end of the game?
Oh, it was lower. I think it was like 130. See, we can look this up. The East won by 3. Okay, and the big storyline is, one, they play defense, and that was fun to see. It was a fair balance. I'll be honest with you. I was nervous for Joel Embiid because I've spoken on this plenty of times. Like, he is just a reckless big dude, and him and Russ went back and forth a little bit in some exchanges at the rim. But towards the end of the game, it's a 3-point game, and it's Steph's team's ball. First, I'm not gonna lie, I thought Harden was gonna be like, I'm the man, I'm taking the shot. I'm flicking the wrist. But they get the ball to Steph, and LeBron and KD trap him in the far corner, and they don't even get a shot up. And they celebrated like they won a playoff game. And I have to say, I don't think I've seen Steph this salty outside of an NBA Finals loss. And so it was entertaining, man. I'm as much as I'm killing the Saturday night events, the All-Star game, well done. The effort level was just right, and it came down to the end, and it was really interesting to see it play out. Now, the All-Star festivities tonight felt a little bit like 2005. I mean, DTP?
Yeah, nobody's saying DTP. These young cats, if you're 13 to 17 now, you didn't listen to Ludacris. You just saw him you saw him in Fast and Furious, and you might know a little about him in Atlanta, but cats are on some Migos, 10 toes down, even newer stuff than I can even come up with. I'm old now, but yeah, DTP, nobody in Atlanta is really the Dirty Bird.
Well, I don't know like what so you like I don't know what if there was like an agenda being in Los Angeles, but literally you're talking about Jamie Foxx performing, Ludacris, Pharrell Williams at halftime, and then Fergie.
Let's play some basketball!
I'm gonna take the Shaq role. No, stay off Fergie. Stay off Fergie.
No, man. No, because the audience, and let the audience, like, and I've spoken on this in the comments, those of you that are reading this, you know, you are my smartest friend and my most educated. And I say that because to me, that's a difference, right? And you have both of those attributes, man. And you have a lot of knowledge in music.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, what I took from that is, okay, go watch Streisand 1963. What we do sometimes as performers, and if you can, check out my page. I've got some chord melody stuff. I'm coming with some classical guitar stuff and some piano stuff soon. And, you know, I've studied music for a good amount of time. I went to University of Arizona and Arizona State and all this type of stuff. But I've had a lot of good friends who are great musicians, whether that's from concert pianists down to little kids that play violin or whatever. But what I noticed about what Fergie was trying to do, Fergie is a backup singer at best. And I'm not trying to knock her. If you put the Black Eyed Peas behind her and you got a lot of flash, it's commercials, basically. You think about a commercial as opposed to a person who's actually a good salesman. They're both trying to achieve the same task. The commercial is going to give you the highlights and see the person using the product. That's Fergie. She'll do very nicely. That's what's been her entertainment capacity. I think she grew up as a Nickelodeon kid, so she knows how to get on a set.
Yeah, are you sure she was a kid when Nickelodeon was? I think Fergie was a kid maybe before color TV.
Well, yeah, you might have called me, but I'm saying she probably started off on, you know, I can't fully explain it, but what I can say about her performance in general was she had an idea of what she wanted to do, but her training and upbringing and experience is not necessarily that. Someone like Christina Aguilera can actually sing those sultry jazz tunes with just a single upright bass. She tried to have a single upright bass, and if you're basically going to be plunking along like that, you have to have a very powerful and controlled voice. So if y'all get a chance, watch 1963, Barbra Streisand, I believe it's Down with Love. And that's what Fergie was trying to do. But she's not Barbra Streisand. She can't necessarily just come in and entertain with her voice, with nobody jumping around behind her or no explosions or no light show. She doesn't necessarily have the acumen and acuity in her voice to really draw you to it. So she tried a genre that was different, which, you know, I commend her for. You want to expand your skills. But she would not get up on a jazz bandstand and sing with a single upright bass. I have some friends that are like 18 and they would pipe her in that general region. But whenever it comes to the, you know, dancing, singing, this and that, she's got that, but she's her voice is not made for individual upright bass, single vocalist, jazz, sultry type sounds. Her voice is not built for that, in my opinion.
So when in vocal terminology, like if you really serve somebody, you pipe them?
Well, yeah, that's what it's called in the bandstand. A lot of jazz cats, piping cats, or it's you know, cutting heads. Back in the 60s and 70s, the headhunters were actually the cats who you'd play something, then they'd come up next and just basically repeat every line that you played, but just make it cooler. And you do that back and forth night after night, and then people do amazing things. So I'm just thinking that's how you get to sing with an upright bass, one voice, is going through that type of methodology and that type of grind. Fergie, she's done much more than I have musically, but I don't think that she has a jazz voice. And that's,
let me ask you this before we venture to. I think the best part about it was like at the end, right? She thought she killed it. She was like, right? You know, she thought she killed it with her old ass witch hands, man. I think it was like it was a metapausal performance, dog. But and even to back up a little bit, like they really had Jamie Foxx out there in a cowboy hat rapping.
Oh.
Like who green lighted this?
Yeah.
You're in LA. You got Nipsey Hussle. You got Game. You got Snoop. Anything. I mean, the shit was wild. How it went down like that. The highlight of the performancing was Pharrell's little dancer that was highlighted. That was special. Even if it looked like Jaden Smith a little bit. she moved right.
Yeah, yeah.
I say it. That's now I'm gonna get killed for all sorts of things in that right there. But so to wrap it up with the music though. Because to me, it feels like at least vocally, I know with playing instruments is very different, but vocally, aren't you kind of you can only work with what you were given?
Let's play some basketball!
That shit is fucking trash, dog. Get the fuck off the airwaves.
To some extent, there's different types of vocalists. Like if you look at an operatic singer or somebody who sings Broadway, what really distinguishes them is the control of their larynx, like how well you can keep the top of your mouth open. So some people, you hear a lot of vibrato. They want to put a lot of wave in their voice, but that's actually a mask. When you look at a good singer, they're able to sing pure tones. They don't have to add any extra or effects. So it's the difference between some people try and sing with emotion, which is the last thing you want to do. You want to sing with technique. But if you can sing with technique and emotion, you'll actually captivate your crowd. But I think tonight, Fergie just tried to sing with that emotion. Like you said, menopause was getting to her. She started thinking about Streisand and having this big epic thing, and somebody co-signed. What was that one channel we used to watch, the WB? Didn't it seem like the WB all over again? Like you're going to have the Jamie Foxx show and then Homeboys from Outer Space. Like it's just...
I thought someone was going to come out in some FUBU. And it was, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. But it was overall, I think that the weekend was successful. I'm glad. The only thing I will say about the game was I was having 4 Warriors in the game and seeing that egos were getting a little testy. There was a little bit, there was a little bit of aggression around the rim and stuff like that. Guys challenging shots I was like, dear God, I don't want anybody to get hurt, and I do not want a Warrior to get hurt. So I think they avoided that. And I think LeBron wanted to celebrate on the big stage at some point this season, and this was his opportunity to, pump his fists in the air on a big stage, because I don't know if he'll get one later in the season.
Yeah, definitely, man. When you think about pumping your fist, that kind of reminds you of that one kid you would show me who was pumping his chest. That little kid who was sitting sidelines. I think that's a pretty smooth story. That African cat, right?
Yeah, man, and back to the immigrant mentality, and I was talking a little bit about this, and in being that and another thing that we share in common, we were both adopted, and me being adopted into a family where my father is Ethiopian, and my uncle married into a Puerto Rican family. So I was kind of raised around immigrants in that immigrant mentality. And that kid, and we got to talking about toughness and tough guys and what is tough. And around the league, you say, oh, he's tough, he's hard. Is he tough or is he dangerous? And Jay, you know who Jay Billis is now? He does college basketball, and he wrote a book. I believe it's called Toughness. I'll try to link it, but he listed basically the 7 habits of a tough basketball player. So talk on defense, the ability to show that you're willing to get on the floor for a loose ball, right? Sprint the floor, play so hard that your coach has to take you out. Like there's like, oh, you got to take him out. He's used everything in his tank. Show strength in your body language, right? Don't show that if you're hurting or you're worried. This one here's a little more, there's more layers to it. It's not your shot, it's our shot. And that's something, if you want to look at the list, it's easily accessible. And then look your coaches and teammates in the eye. And so, like, that's how he defines it on a basketball court. Basically, everything Nick Young doesn't do, Warrior fans. So, but, you know, I think about it differently because it's like everything is relative. So, like, Steph Curry is really tough as far as I think, like, the mental pressure that he can deal with and the expectations, fighting through ankle injuries, fighting through getting pulled and pushed around a lot. But, like, as opposed to someone like who just made it through a whole lot. Like if you look at Giannis Antetokounmpo's story, or where it's relative, right? He's been through way more. He's had nothing, you know. He's and so it's like these levels of toughness. And then what it really leads me to is dangerous. Because you say, oh, he's a tough guy, like he's willing to fight, or he's a tough guy, don't mess with him. Patrick Beverley or a Draymond Green, right? But thinking about dangerous and who's dangerous, and I'm talking really within the context of like sports and fighting, or just like a fight in a bar. And I kind of broke it down into 5 kind of subcategories of one, aggression. And I was raised on Pac. Being from the Bay, California in the 90s, I was raised on Pac bomb first. And what I mean by that as a kid is as a teen, I figured out kind of quickly, like, yo, if you're the aggressor and you throw first, your chances to win are greatly increased. So you have to wage aggression in a person. Are they? Because you could be built like LeBron, but if you're passive and you're not aggressive, you're maybe not as dangerous. And then what that also leads into is fearlessness. And people say, you know, you say, oh, he's fearless. That means he's dangerous, right? He ain't scared. He ain't never scared. But this is something I learned training MMA and bouncing as well, that it's not that the fearless person doesn't feel threatened. So they're not necessarily a threat. But someone who's scared feels threatened, so they're a threat, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. When I have a small wiener dog, he probably weighs around 11 pounds, and my wife's son has a huge pit bull. And it's very amazing that the wiener dog just annoys the pit bull infinitely whenever they hang out, but they have a love-hate relationship. But my little dog will definitely try and jab and bark, get intense with the other one. But anytime the pit bull really puts his foot down and it lets you know that he's not about to have that any longer, you're not about to eat his food, you're not about to play with his toys, then everybody has to back up. So you're right. I would say that my little dog is dangerous because he might just fly off the handle in fear, trying to protect himself. But the other dog is obviously tough. It knows what it is. It doesn't have to pump its chest and do a lot of bravado and extra. So that's just a little example that I see a lot of times. Any of y'all who are dog owners, you know the whole little dog syndrome, how sometimes it's all bark. But yeah, it could be reversed too. You can have a big ass dog and it could be soft. But when you think of specific players, like who do you think would actually be tough, or who would not be?
I think that, you know, I mentioned Patrick Beverley. I think is a guy, if you look at his story in his battle to the league, and I think he and see that there's the thing where I think he is fearless. So you play into that. But as far as let me get back into the list, finish the list of it, because I think he, like I said, he's going to be aggressive, right? And he's fearless. So he may not always feel threatened. He may not be the one to attack, but I think he's prideful. But then you go into physical ability. He's not the biggest of guys. I mean, obviously he's an NBA athlete, but he's an average sized man. And then durability of the spirit. And an emotional durability, right? Because if you play a sport and you realize usually your mind can go before your body does. We think our body is fatigued, but really it's our mind that goes first. And so the emotional and spiritual durability, and then that follows the body. And then my last category is self-worth, because you know you hear some, you know how you say you never fight a man with nothing to lose. And so it's like, what's your self-worth? And the example I used was, let's say hypothetically you were talking shit to LeBron and you got in a fight with LeBron. Now, how much, like, would LeBron really like dump on you, put you on your back and just like beat on your skull? You know what I'm saying? And part of the reason why he wouldn't is because of his self-worth. It would be he has too much to lose. And so when breaking down someone who's dangerous, usually if they don't have a lot of self-worth, that definitely heightens the danger factor.
Yes, of course. Yeah. It makes tons of sense. Think about the time in your life from a developmental standpoint when you sometimes have the least self-worth. That's whenever you're between the ages of 11 to 16, 17, maybe 18 for some people. And that's once they start getting gang members or people just start engaging in crazy behavior. Unfortunately, that's the age you want to get them. When their self-worth is the lowest, they are the dangerous. So if you look at Chicago, that's why, I mean, the old heads, the people who are 25, 26 and upwards, they might get at you, but it's these young people who feel like I've lived most of my life. There's not much else out there. I don't care. 11 to 18, where most of us have been, where you're still developing a sense of self-worth or self-identity. That's once you become dangerous. And you even think about suicide bombers or terrorist activity. Most of those terrible people who prey on that want somebody relatively immature. So I think there is a coupling between maturity and your sense of self-worth and how dangerous you could become.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said. So, and I'll alter my list a little bit because I kind of went on this rant and I wanted to get those categories out.
But so what's the categories again?
Well, so one is aggression, and then fear or fearlessness, and then physical ability, and then spiritual and emotional durability, and then self-worth. And you could it's subject that you could order them and prioritize them how you see it. That's how I listed them, how I see them. And I would take a guy like a Patrick Beverly or a David West, and I think they're tough guys because I think that, they know who they are, and they're aggressive, they're spiritually durable, and obviously they have physical abilities. But then if you go to the more of like the dangerous side, I would take more of like a DeMarcus Cousins or a Russell Westbrook, where, right, they're aggressive, but I think there's a lot of fear behind a lot of what they do. I think fear drives a lot of what they do, and that's why maybe they're over emotional. But I don't know. I don't want to psychobabble it too much. But I would categorize, though. You know what I mean? That's just to give an idea of tough guys versus dangerous guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, whenever I think of tough players, I tend to reflect back to history or whatever. But Anthony Mason, Charles Oakley, Robert Parrish, LJ. And just for another one, Bernard Hopkins. I love watching him fight. He just had that look to him to where you knew he wasn't scared. He had been in that arena several times. And there's somebody who I consider to be dangerous, like you were mentioning, Lance Stevenson. And when you think about people's mixtapes, we were talking about Lonzo Ball and that music he had just put out, and some of the NBA players who put things out. Lance Stevenson looked real comfortable in that video. He looked just like Bobby Shmurda. Like when you hear his raps, they sounded real authentic, as if he was really
the eighth grader.
Living that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. People can sense it, man. Just like you can sense authenticity, and as you get older, you get better at it, and you can feel like, oh, you can pick up on some signals. And Lance is definitely, I think, about that life, right, and dangerous. And he may not be tough, right, and I think we've done a pretty good job outlining. He may not be tough. He's dangerous. Who's tough? You could say, who's battled back? Like, let's take. I always go back to Warriors, but like Sean Livingston's got to be tough to come back from that. They said they were going to amputate his leg from the number 3 pick, and how he's battled back through his career. So he's a tough guy, but he's not dangerous, right? And, you can mix and match. There's outliers on each.
Yeah, back to your Euro idea, too. We're talking about Dragic and Shrimp. I still think that Deadlift Shrimp looks just like the dude on Super Nintendo Street Fighter, Guile. I can see him delivering that boomerang-type punch or something like that. He just looks hella rough.
Right. I think the Europeans and international players, I think that they grew up getting in more fist fights. Nothing serious. Like I'm not saying, but I mean, I think that there's a higher volume of fighting, but I think they're more willing to quickly engage. If you go to they understand to be the aggressor. I could definitely see like Manu like hitting an awkward Euro step and out-gauging somebody, like like he just something something crazy, man. But yeah, I just outlining. No, these guys again. Here's the thing with the NBA and why we don't see fights is because of the self-worth. There's too much on the line. Mm-hmm. But
this isn't the LA Fitness or nothing.
Right. And you just know, right? And think about it yourselves as you guys are listening to this. If you're paying pickup ball at LA Fitness and there's a dude that he's hammering people and no one likes the way he's playing and he smells like he hasn't showered in a few days, right? He doesn't look kept. He's playing in Tim's. No, but he just looks like a dude that doesn't have much, right? He's probably sleeping on someone's couch. And then he hammers you and he gets in your face like what are you gonna do about it, right? Isn't it more like I probably he might bite.
Right.
I do not want to transfer fluids with this gentleman.
Yeah.
But I'm getting away from it, man. But yeah, I also like the idea of the spirit of the body. And were you looking into that, like that Marine rule, 60-40 or 40-60 rule?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of top business people will go and hang out with Navy SEALs or different special force people. And what they'll have you do is do pull-ups. And basically the person will start out and they'll get 15 pull-ups. And they'll be like, all right, take 30 seconds. And then you'll go again and maybe you get 9 pull-ups. And you think that you're done. Like, dang, I just did a grip. But then that person will come to you and say, no, get back up there in 15 seconds and do more. And it kind of makes a lot of sense that if you think about the halfway point of something, you're kind of halfway at sometimes is all the way. If you breach that 51-49 barrier, most of us think, oh, it's done. I've tipped the scales and now I'm more on the good side than the bad side or whatever it may be. But with that 60-40 rule, they're convincing you that once you feel you're exhausted and you can't do any more, that's just your brain giving you a warning sign. But your body can do much more than you may think. And there's even some teachers that examine what helps grittier students succeed and achieve. So you think about some kid whose both parents were, electrical engineers. They've been on a path to Harvard since day one, as compared to some kid who grew up in Sao Paulo and learned medicine by themselves from diagnosing and helping their family. Both these individuals go to Harvard Med School, and we might argue that the kid from Sao Paulo is probably going to be a better surgeon. Not because he's smarter, it's just he has overcome a lot of environmental constraints that have given him a bit of grit. So grit is very much like what you were talking about before, and it boils down to how much can you inspire yourself, access passion, and sustain motivation. And with your idea of self-identity, sustained motivation, like I just know that I'm not going to quit. I'm not necessarily a hard ass or anything like that, but my dad and my family and life has just taught me you never give up. Sometimes that can be an Achilles heel. Sometimes you do have to jump ship and do something different. But when you study grit and what type of a person has more savvy or moxie, it's basically how much they can inspire themselves. Can they access their passion quickly? And can they sustain that motivation? So I think that those types of tools might be intertwined with some of what you're saying about who's tough and who's not really.
And what do you think, how much of that is innate? And then how much is like, let's take like Steph and Klay Thompson, right? Like this essentially, for them to have grit, it's either innate or it would have had to have been simulated, right? And how much of it do you think is like hardwired into each individual? And can it be? I mean, we know it can be taught to an extent, but I guess is there a limit?
Well,
can you make a pussy someone tough?
Yeah. So Forbes even went into it as well, like we were saying before, that a lot of business people study these other models in order to get a corporate vision and try to increase their bottom line. But another thing that's kind of similar to Klay and Steph is they say you have to adopt flexible thinking patterns while surrounding yourself with those that persevere. So each of them, that would be kind of a shared experience between those two. They were surrounded by those that have persevered due to their experience with their parents being in athletics and being around it all the time. So they had a firsthand view of what it looked like, what it felt like, how do you struggle, how do you move forward. But on the fringes, their lives were definitely very well intact as a function of them being in that environment. They didn't miss any meals. They didn't have any real challenges that some other people have. So can you make a pussy tough? Under any circumstances, a person can do it a couple times, but can you sustain it? That's the idea. Anybody can be tough for a little bit. You have to get a shot in your arm, like I did yesterday, like a dummy, for chipping myself up. I know if y'all can see on the video, I've got this 10 stitches under my lip. But back to Steph and Clay. I'm not quite sure, man. I think Clay's definitely a lot.
Clay, I think Clay is Clay. It's like, to me, it's like it's hardwired in Clay, right? He's just kind of innately kind of a savage, as far as like not an aggressive one, but just like unflackable, And it also made me think, because I guess the other end of the spectrum, or the opposite argument, would be like, so let's take Draymond Green. I believe, don't quote me on this, y'all, but I believe he said he was like the first person in his family to graduate from college, right? And he went to Michigan State. And you can take any example of someone like that, right? So for him, he had no pressure as far as expectations. Where like someone like Steph or Clay, you could argue that they felt pressure or gained, I don't know if that's the right term, some grit from the expectations that were set around them.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You definitely have to behave in a different way. You collect a different posture. You get a different mind state. People come at you, since you didn't have Draymond's story of, having some environmental constraints. People expect you, you've already been set up for this. You have to perform. And you tend to kind of go about it in relationship to the environment that it comes out in. So directly to answer your question, it's important to remember that we scare people in the same way that we're scared. So if I'm scared of snakes, I'm going to scare you with snakes. If I get loud and aggressive, that truthfully proves that I'm scared of someone getting loud and aggressive with me. So when you think of Clay and Steph and the calculations that they engage in and the persona that they put off, that is environmentally driven. That's how they saw people act. That's what they aspire to do. And they're coming from that position. When you look at Draymond, the way he had to achieve the same goal was to be a bit more vocal. You kind of have to act different in each area. If you were to switch roles, Draymond grows up in Steph's house with those same patterns, he'd be identified like the Fresh Prince. But if Steph grew up in Draymond's hood, he'd kind of be identified as like Carlton. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of funny where you grow up. I mean, think about it. We all watched.
Well, but wait, I'm kind of missing that. So, but like if Steph grew up in Saginaw, Michigan, or whatever, right? Wouldn't he look like Delonte West? Wouldn't he be a little more like that, then?
That's what I'm saying. Like he would be a little bit louder. He'd be a little bit more aggressive. He'd have to get his needs met, and it would look physically different. Where Draymond, if he grew up in Steph's house, maybe being loud and being out of sorts might not get you what you're actually trying to get. That might get you further away from your objective. So I'm just saying, like, we kind of adopt the strategies to get what we need within the environment that we were first placed in,
Yeah, no, it's an interesting subject, because it's even looking like, let's take like LeBron's son, and I know like D Wade's son's really good at hoop, but like if you think about like they have so many built-in advantages, but yet there is so much pressure and there's such a target and there's so much expectations that in itself is probably going to make them pretty tough, at least on a basketball court. But yeah, man, I just, and back to you and just willing to do the most.
Yeah, man. That's something I'm having to learn a little bit from. And that's why I love kicking it with you, the homie, because you've kind of taught me on that self-preservation concept. Because within that sustainability, you got to kind of calculate. I've never had that idea of risk management like we were talking about before. Your ability to figure out how risky something is the sole thing that keeps you alive. That's why whenever you drive with somebody who's kind of out of sorts behind the wheel, you kind of yield to self-preservation. Like, granted, they might weave in and out, but I doubt they're just going to be that inattentive and crash. So that gives me some comfort even in chaotic situations, a person's innate sense of self-preservation. But whenever I play sports, when you think environmentally, I was told from day one, all those things you said about a defensive player on a basketball court, that aligns perfectly with Texas football back in the 90s. Run the whole field all the time, never look tired, never take your helmet off, never bend over and show them if you're hurt or not, finish every play aggressively. And whenever I play flag football, which those ideas really don't couple because it's more of a skilled game. Basically, I was chasing a dude down from left outside linebacker, and he was a fast QB. He was kind of getting me throughout the day. And anyways, my dumbass dives at him near the sideline, and he picks his back leg up, and basically, as I'm coming down, I take two of his cleats right to my lip. And to be honest, it's long overdue. Anybody who knows me, this is a blessing in disguise because now I'm just going to get faster. If you think about it, diving at someone during flag football, that just means you got burnt. It's not a good characteristic. You need to just run a little bit more swift and get the flag. So, yeah, man, but I am a little bit willing to do more than others are willing to do. I'm willing to stay up later. I'm willing to study harder. I'm willing to take more pain if necessary. But for the long run, there's been tons of running backs who used to have that mentality who can't even walk to this day. So you got to have some run out of bounds type behavior or the next play, you know. But yeah, man, I ended up having to get 10 stitches. And I think I am a tough guy, to be quite honest. I'm learning and trying to shave off some of those less productive behaviors. But I didn't even feel the stitches. Like the lady, she didn't want to lie to me and tell me how bad it was. But I knew as soon as she injected the numbing medication that the cleat had gone all the way through my lip because I just felt this whole stuff spill into my mouth. And I was like, oh, shit. So, yeah, she put about 7 of them up front and then 3 of them in the lip area. So it was just kind of weird. It was this English lady. She was smooth. One crazy thing, she was sewing me up and she had allergies. So the whole time I'm seeing this like little booger of snot and sweat, the coupling right here. But it never, yeah. So the whole, yeah. But luckily it never did. She did very well, like under that amount of duress with her nose dripping, trying to sew me up. It never dripped. So I will give her that.
It just hangs there. It just
was
hangs
intense.
there all
It was way too intense, but she was hella cool.
Hell no.
But yeah, man. So yeah, I've kind of learned my lesson that within that there has to be risk assessment, and that comes from a certain level of maturity. Because I know you're really good at that. Like you're not about to jump, you're not about to dive for this, that, and the other.
Right. Well, we have. And to give y'all a little background, man, it's cool. And I think that's why this podcast is going to be very successful as we get better and smoothen the process out, man, because we're so much alike, but we're very different. And we grew up in very different environments. Like you know, James from Texas played football and you were raised in a very structured environment, right? And at me, Aaron, Alchemy, you know, I don't care the names out there, don't matter. I was born and raised, not born, but raised in the Bay Area in California with hippie parents. You know what I mean? And we're the same age and we have the same interests, but I think we teach each other a lot. And I'm kind of, you know, when we compete against each other or we're doing things on the field as coaches, I'm kind of, you know, I like to play a little more coy or a little possum. And, you know, gauge the opponent and maybe surprise them a little bit. But like I said, James, there is an advantage to his side. Like we were talking about perhaps boxing, the chess boxing. I know you too well to know, like, if you know what I'm saying? Like, I think you would be willing to take it further much quicker. You know? And so, again, it's self-preservation. But, you know, maybe not after, you know, maybe you've learned the lesson. But,
yeah, man. It was...
Because, like... Go ahead.
Yeah, it was a blessing in disguise. Like I was saying, it was long overdue. This needed to happen. So, you know, for everybody out there who I've kind of, after the whistle, bumped into you, or, you know, whenever it wasn't supposed to be as physical as it was, you know, I apologize.
And I got to say, man, like at my age, almost 35, and I know everybody's, hey, you're not old. It's relative. It's relative. I'm just saying athletically. For a basketball player, 35 years old, you know, I'm starting to just really gauge risk reward. Like, do I really want to plant off 2 feet and elevate?
Mm-hmm.
maybe hit a float. But you know what I'm saying? But where I've learned from you to carry that tenacity and that go hard is in other aspects of my life, as far as
Oh
studying
yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
drive to go and pursue what I'm doing now, where it was like, hey man, it's okay to work, to just keep on working. It's okay to work beyond 8 hours. It's okay to go hard all the time. I'm capable of doing it, because I'd watch you come to work and teach classes and counsel kids, and then go work somewhere else and do this and just keep on going, and not even want recognition or acknowledge that it was an extreme schedule.
Yes, man. And that kind of aligns back with what you were saying. A person who is dangerous has a lot of self-proclaimed awards and prowess. So if you have to talk about how smooth you are and what you're doing and this and that, that's cool. And at a certain level, if you've achieved those things, it speaks a lot to your character. But you're going to find that the dangerous person has that self-proclamation. But back to the not wanting the recognition or whatever it is, I believe humble people tend to get, not to get too spiritual or whatever, but tend to get blessed with more, because once they get it, they'll be able to use it to help others. Because a true sign of intelligence is getting something for you and somebody else. We tend to look at the genius mentality, and it's very self-serving in our environment. The person who's considered to be a philanthropist or an altruist tends to give to others. So I don't know if I'm speaking your language, but you're right. A lot of times people who work hard and who are willing to do more, they don't need the recognition because they get an intrinsic up from it. It's just something they have to do.
Who are you doing it for? If you're doing it for yourself, you don't need the recognition, is the way I see it. But yeah, man, let's enough of boosting our egos here. Is there anything else that that you wanted to cover in this one? I think we're smoothing it out. Anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to go over my one weird sport really quickly. Shin kicking. So it's primarily played in England, and it requires that you stand in front of somebody, grab their shoulders, and then kick one another in the shins repeatedly until someone lifts one of their legs. And after a leg is lifted, you can then do a hip throw, a push, or some type of fireman's maneuver in order to get the point. And you basically play this game until one can't stand, or you've just collected a whole bunch of points. And the gear that you wear is what's the most crazy. You basically take straw, like the stuff that horses and cattle eat, and you put it inside these big ass socks. And that's basically your gear. And you line up and just basically wail away at a person's shins until they lift their leg up, and then you can push them over, which I think is just insane. I tend not to think people from my cultural demographic would be attracted to this. I think in England, cats, or Ireland.
Where's the glory?
Yeah,
where's the glory, man?
Yeah, the gear's whack.
Hell
We're not
no.
trying to play nothing where the gear's whack. And one of the caveats was you're not allowed to wear metal boots. So I guess they had some people cheating, and they were coming with some steel toes and really just messing people up real crazy. So Doc Marten steel toes are not appropriate attire in shin kicking, I guess. And then another game that's out there, sepak takraw, which is foot volleyball. It looks so dope to me. We used to play this game back in the day in high school. It wasn't like this, but basically we would go to the park every day and chill, and we'd bring a soccer ball, and your job was to it was like parkour / soccer, where you would try and jump on tables, kick the ball, and just keep the ball in the air for as much as you can. But this sepak takraw is super intense, man. Cats are basically windmilling, bicycle kicking over this net. And so check it out if you can. Sepak takraw, foot volleyball. Try and get on that if you can.
Okay, man. Okay, I'm the shit. You can go ahead and try them out and let us know, because again, I'm like, I don't know. I'll play some 2K, and I will spot up from the 3-point line.
Yeah.
Real quick, y'all. I want to incorporate some listeners and subscribers' questions. Remember the Hey Alchemy segment that I was doing a little bit? It can be Hey James. It can be just a question. You don't even have to preference it like that. But if you send a question you want us to answer, it could be for either one of us, or it could be a broader subject of whatever you think of. Send it to athleticalchemy@gmail.com. I'll put the link in the description of where you can get this podcast. Whether you're watching the video, I do think the visuals really do add to this. But again, you can subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, and there's an RSS feed. So for James and I, we appreciate y'all.